5 aging myths to stop believing after 60. Aging well starts here. Have you ever felt like you're aging too quickly? Not just because of the gray hair, but the way your body reacts more slowly. Your memory sometimes feels foggy, or that quiet feeling of shrinking back, like you no longer want to join in, like you're no longer needed. I ask this because I've felt it too. I'm 70 years old. I'm a retired geriatric doctor, and I've seen thousands of patients over the age of 60. But what I've truly learned didn't come from medical textbooks. It came from conversations and the silences in between me and my patients. I still remember one time a 73-year-old woman came to see me just to ask, "Doctor, I forget things a lot. Am I starting to get dementia?" She still managed her own calendar, drove herself around, cooked for her husband, yet just because she misplaced her keys a few times or forgot an old friend's name, she believed her mind was heading downhill with no brakes. And that's when I realized something important. Many people don't grow old because their bodies are failing, but because in their minds, they've already started believing they are no longer useful. Sad, isn't it? But it's the truth. We carry so many outdated beliefs about aging, that old people are supposed to rest all day, that forgetfulness is normal, that there's no point in learning anything new after a certain age. But those things aren't truths. They're stories we've heard so many times they've stuck to us like dust clinging to an old coat. And if we don't shake them off, they'll follow us to the very end. In this video, I want to walk you through the 5 biggest myths about aging that far too many people over 60 still believe. I've heard them again and again from patients, from friends, and honestly, even from myself. I'll share real stories, not to lecture you, but so that you and I can pause and reflect. Are any of these beliefs quietly making us shrink back from life? And more importantly, why we need to let go of them, starting today. And if you recognize yourself in anything, I say don't stay silent. Leave me a comment below the video. Tell me your story. And if what I share speaks to you, if you're also searching for ways to stay healthy, to live with more purpose and dignity after 60, then please subscribe to this channel. Not because I'm a doctor, but because I'm on the same journey as you, one step at a time. Now let's begin with the very first myth, one I believed for many years, and that many people over 60 still cling to today, even though it's slowly making them weaker every single day. Aging myth number 1. The older you get, the more you should rest. Have you ever noticed? The longer you sit, the harder it is to stand back up. And when that becomes your daily pattern, you might not realize it until one day you need someone else's help just to get on your feet. I first met Mr. Joseph when he was 68, tall, broad-shouldered, a former military man. But on the day he came to my clinic, he walked in slowly, his feet dragging like someone had tied weights to his ankles. When I asked about his recent condition, he shook his head and sighed. "I haven't been doing much, Doc. I'm retired now, getting old. Time to rest." Old folks who keep trying to move around just make things worse. His words struck me not because they were wrong, but because he had believed them for so long. They had become his way of life. Joseph used to be active, loved sports, and often took his wife for evening walks. But ever since he retired, he sat more, lay down more, and convinced himself that rest is what old people are supposed to do. Day by day, he lost a bit more strength, not because he was aging, but because he stopped moving. We often assume rest is good for older adults, but too much rest for too long is actually the fastest path to muscle loss, poor balance, joint stiffness, and dependence, even for the smallest tasks. What many don't realize is that after just 2 or 3 weeks of being sedentary, the body starts losing muscle mass, and even a small stumble could mean a broken bone. I once read a study from the Mayo Clinic showing that older adults who stayed physically active just through walking, gardening, or gentle home exercises remained independent longer, fell less often, and even experienced fewer symptoms of depression compared to those who sat most of the day. The World Health Organization recommends that adults over 65 get at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity per week. That's just 30 minutes a day, enough to protect your independence. For Mr. Joseph, I didn't hand him a fancy workout plan. I simply said, tomorrow try walking outside for 10 minutes. No need to go fast, no need to go far. Just remind your body what it feels like to move. A week later, he called me. His voice had changed. He told me he made it all the way to the park near his home, and for the first time in months, he slept soundly through the night. I'm not saying everyone needs to hit the gym or run 5 miles at sunrise, but you can start with something simple that makes a real difference. Each morning, walk around your yard or block for 20 to 30 minutes. You don't need to be fast, just consistent. It'll wake up your circulation, your joints, and even your spirit. And if you're able, add a few light resistance moves in the afternoon. Or after dinner, sit to stand repetitions from a chair arm, lifts with a water bottle, or simply balancing on one leg for 10 seconds. You don't need a personal trainer or expensive equipment, just the decision not to let your body fall into free fall. And if today feels like a hard day to begin, remind yourself of this. You're not exercising to do something grand. You're doing it to keep your independence, to keep the legs that carry you to the door, the hands that cook your meals, the heart that keeps beating strong and steady for many more years to come. Aging myth number 2. Memory loss is just normal. After 60, have you ever turned the whole house upside down, looking for your glasses, only to find them sitting right on top of your head? Have you ever walked into the kitchen, stood there for a moment and completely forgotten why you went in, and then quietly thought to yourself, oh no, am I starting to lose it? If you've ever had moments like that, you're not alone. But what's even more troubling than the forgetfulness is the belief that your memory is slipping away and that there's nothing you can do to stop it. That thought, small as it seems, when repeated day after day, can slowly grow into a dangerous belief that you're declining, that your mind can no longer be trusted, that you'd be better off staying quiet, shrinking inward, not even trying to remember anymore. I once had a patient named Margaret. She was 74, who came to see me with a worried look on her face. Before she even sat down, she said, "Doctor, I think my memory's getting worse." Maybe Alzheimer's is coming for me, I asked. "What kinds of things have you been forgetting lately?" She smiled sheepishly and shrugged. "Well, I forgot the name of my neighbor's daughter, and last week I went to the market, but couldn't remember what I needed to buy. And one morning, I put my coffee in the microwave, then spent 10 minutes searching the whole house for it." I paused, looked her in the eyes, and gently said, "Mrs. Margaret, what you're describing is not dementia. It's aging, but not in your brain. It's the aging that comes from a busy life, from stress, from sleepless nights and too many silent worries that no one else sees. What broke my heart was that she had carried that fear for nearly a year, all because of a few moments of forgetfulness, moments we all experience. She had labeled herself with a diagnosis no one should carry without a true medical evaluation. I'm losing my mind? Yes, as we grow older, memory might slow down. That's true. But real memory loss, the kind where you forget your own family, get lost in your neighborhood of 20 years, or don't know what day it is something entirely different. Sadly, the fear of it too early too often makes many people stop trying to learn, stop talking to others, and avoid challenges, because they think every little mistake is a sign of something bigger breaking down. According to Harvard Health, the difference between normal memory aging and cognitive decline becomes clear if we pay close attention. People with normal aging may take longer to recall things, but they can usually remember with a prompt. They still care for themselves and manage daily life, even if more slowly. True dementia, on the other hand, includes behavioral changes, poor judgment, and a gradual loss of ability to do basic tasks. I gave Margaret a simple screening and asked about her sleep diet and daily routine. It turned out she had been dealing with chronic insomnia for nearly 2 years, irregular meals, and rarely left the house since her husband passed away. I told her, sometimes memory issues aren't about the brain at all. They're about a heart that hasn't healed, a life lacking sunlight, laughter, and someone to talk to. So we started from the basics. She began jotting down her daily tasks in a little notebook, practicing light meditation each morning, eating breakfast on time, and learning one new recipe each week to exercise her brain. 6 weeks later, she returned. Her eyes were brighter, her voice more lively, and she said something that I still cherish. I don't remember everything, but I do remember that I'm still alive and that I can still learn how to live again. If you're wondering whether your memory is slipping, don't panic just yet. Maybe what you're missing isn't memory, but sleep, or routine, or connection. And if there's one piece of advice I hope you carry from this story, it's this. Don't call it memory loss if you haven't tried nurturing your memory every day. In the next section, I'll talk about another common myth, not about health, but about belief. The idea that old age is the time to stop growing, stop learning, stop dreaming. But can anything really limit the human spirit? I don't think so. And I can't wait to share with you why. Aging myth. 3. Personal growth ends with old age. Do you remember the last time you learned something new? Not because you had to, but because you were curious, excited, and simply wanted to explore. If you have to pause and think for a moment, you're not alone. Many people over 60 or 65 slowly push aside the idea of learning, growing, or trying something new. Not because they no longer want to, but because they've come to believe that growing older means knowing when to stop. I used to think that was normal too until I met Mr. Raymond, an 82-year-old man living alone since his wife passed. He came to my clinic for a routine blood pressure check, but our conversation lasted nearly an hour. Why? Because he started telling me about the paintings he'd been working on. Surprised, I asked, "When did you start learning to paint?" He chuckled and said, "Just last year, I bought some brushes to kill time, and now I paint every day from morning until noon." He didn't care about being praised. He didn't aim to be better than anyone else. All he needed was the feeling that each day he was learning to draw one more line mix, one more color. Many people assume personal development is a young person's privilege. But the truth is, even in old age, the brain still has the capacity to form new neurons, a fact confirmed by the National Institute on Aging. Learning a new skill, no matter how small, like playing an instrument, trying a new recipe, picking up a few words in a foreign language, or writing a short memoir, can stimulate the brain, improve memory, lift mood, and most importantly, keep that spark alive that says, "I'm still growing." People often age faster when they stop learning, not because their brains have stopped working, but because they've stopped believing they can still grow. I've had patients who picked up the ukulele at 75 grandmothers who learned how to video call their grandkids, and even a gentleman from New Mexico who enrolled in an online painting class after seeing an ad on YouTube. And every one of them told me the same thing: "I feel like I've come back to life." If life has started to feel a little dull, try picking something, anything you've always been curious about. Write a few lines each day in a notebook. Practice your memory by learning 5 new words each week. Try planting a new kind of flower, or cook a dish from a different culture just for the experience. You don't have to become an expert. You just have to give yourself permission to keep growing. If you've ever believed that old age is the time to stop, maybe now is exactly the time to start again. And if there's something you've always wanted to try but haven't quite dared to yet, leave a comment below with just one line: "I still want to learn this." Whether you're 60 or 90, I promise I'll read it. And who knows? Maybe someone else will find the inspiration they need to begin just from your courage to share. In the next section, I want to explore one of the most harmful myths of all, that illness is just inevitable as we age. But is age really the cause, or just the excuse we've accepted for giving up too soon? Let's keep going together. Aging myth number 4. Illness is inevitable. Have you ever said something like this: "Doctor, I want to be healthy too, but at my age, getting sick is just part of the deal, right?" I've heard that sentence hundreds of times, and often from people I truly care about, not because they've given up, but because they've come to believe they no longer have control over what happens to their bodies. I remember Mr. George, 73 years old, came into my clinic with a long list of issues: high blood pressure, prediabetes, high cholesterol, insomnia, joint pain. But what saddened me wasn't his lab results. It was what he said when I asked where he wanted to start. He sighed, shook his head, and said, "Doc, at my age, these things are unavoidable. I'm lucky to have made it this far, but I couldn't accept that answer. Not because I disagreed with him, but because I've seen far too many people believe the same thing. And that belief alone has ended lives faster than the diseases themselves. Yes, we get older, but age alone is not the root cause of chronic illness. According to the CDC, nearly 80% of common conditions in seniors: type 2 diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, gout, fatty liver, are preventable or manageable through timely lifestyle changes. The tragedy is too many people over 60 have already made peace with the idea that this is just part of aging. And when we believe that we stop trying, we don't reevaluate our diet, we don't address our sleep, we skip the exercise. Slowly, that surrender leads us down a path to wheelchairs, oxygen tanks, and the quiet pain of depending on others for even the smallest things. With Mr. George, I didn't promise to make him young again. I simply said, "Give me 30 days. Start your morning with warm water, eat breakfast, on-time walk for 20 minutes, and skip the salt at dinner. He nodded, not convinced, but willing to try. 2 months later, his blood sugar had dropped significantly. His blood pressure had stabilized. Most importantly, he showed up to his next appointment with a smile. "Doc, I didn't realize my body was still willing to listen." If you're listening to this and thinking that illness is just part of turning 60 or 70, let me speak to you honestly. You may not control your age, but you do control your habits. And your habits are what determine how long you live and what that life will feel like. Start small, cut back on sugar, eat more leafy greens, check your blood pressure regularly, take an evening walk instead of another hour in front of the TV. Not because you have to, but because you still deserve a life of strength and autonomy. If you've ever believed that aging and illness are inseparable, try replacing that belief with something new today. I can still be healthier than I was yesterday. And if that sentence feels right to you, leave it in the comments below, not just to remind yourself, but maybe to inspire someone else who needs to hear it right now. In the final section, I want to talk about something even deeper, something I've heard quietly echoed in the hearts of many older patients. Not the fear of disease, but the fear of no longer being needed, of no longer having value. But is that really true? I don't believe so. And I hope you'll stay with me just a little longer, because what comes next may be the most important truth of all. Aging myth. 5. Getting old means losing your value. Have you ever walked into a room only to realize no one looked up? Have you ever told a story and felt like no one was really listening until the end? If you've ever felt yourself fading into the background, even among your own family, I want you to know you're not alone. But you're also not invisible. I once had a patient named Rose. She was 84, living alone after her husband passed. She was physically healthy, mentally sharp, still fully independent. But when I gently asked if there was anything that worried her, she looked at me, eyes brimming with tears, and said, "Doctor, I'm not sick, but I don't feel like I matter to anyone anymore." That was one of the saddest things I've ever heard. Not because it came from a frail body, but because it came from a soul that felt left behind. We live in a world that moves too fast, with too much technology, and sometimes seniors become quiet shadows in noisy homes. When children are too busy, when grandchildren don't understand, when society celebrates only the young, healthy, productive, it's easy to start believing your time of value has passed. But the truth is, no age can take away your worth. I once read a study in the Journal of Gerontology that found seniors who continue to serve roles in their communities, whether through mentoring, volunteering, or simply sharing their life stories, tend to live longer, feel less depressed, and report a better quality of life. Not because they're still doing things, but because they still feel useful. With Mrs. Rose, I suggested something simple. Write one handwritten letter each week to her granddaughter who was away at college. 6 weeks later, she told me her granddaughter had started writing back. One day, she chuckled and said she asked me how to make her grandpa's old beef stew. "Doctor," I felt alive again. Your value isn't measured by how much money you make, how strong you are, or how much you accomplish. It's in your ability to care, to remember, to listen to, pass on stories. Sometimes, like Rose did, just showing up is enough to warm someone's heart. So if you've ever thought I'm old, I must be a burden, I gently ask you to rewrite that sentence, "I still have something to give." And if this resonates with you, leave a comment, maybe for yourself, maybe for another older adult reading along, so we all remember we still matter. We've just looked back on 5 common myths that have led far too many people over 60 to live smaller lives than they deserve. But perhaps the most important thing isn't what we used to believe, but what we choose to believe starting tomorrow. And in the final section, I hope you'll walk one more step with me, because what I'll share next may help you reclaim something deeper than health, your sense of freedom, purpose, and peace. Final thoughts. Growing old isn't the end. It's the moment you return to yourself. Aging isn't what's frightening. What's far scarier is when we begin to believe we have nothing left to hope for. We've walked through 5 powerful myths about aging beliefs that, if you're brave enough to let go of, could open an entirely new chapter of life after 60. A lighter chapter, a freer one, a chapter that belongs fully to you. No one was born to grow old in the shadows, and no one turns 70 just to quietly count down the days that remain. If there's one lesson I've learned from decades of working with older adults, it's this: you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You only need to live each day true to yourself. Live in a way that your legs can still carry you forward, that your heart can still be moved by something beautiful, that your home still feels like yours, whether through a small potted plant, a journal full of thoughts, or a grandchild's laughter echoing through the room, because you told them a story they'll never forget. If you're wondering, where do I even begin? I have one small suggestion. Choose just one old belief you're ready to challenge. Maybe it's, I don't need to exercise anymore, or my memory isn't useful now. Then ask yourself, is this really true? From that single question, you may start to see more options than you imagined and discover more strength than you ever gave yourself credit for. I'd love to invite you to share something simple but meaningful. Is there a belief about aging you're starting to rethink today? Leave your answer in the comments below. It doesn't have to be long, it just has to be honest. And maybe, just maybe, your words will reach someone else somewhere, right when they need it most. If today's message resonated with you and you'd like to keep walking this path of living well and living meaningfully after 60, feel free to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. And if you found this content truly helpful or inspiring and would like to help me continue creating more heartfelt, high-quality work for this community, you can support the channel with a small, entirely optional donation through the link in the description below. Either way, I'll still be right here, listening, sharing, and walking beside you through the years ahead. Not just to live longer, but to live fully. Thank you for staying until the end, and I hope your tomorrow feels just a little lighter than today.